Hello and welcome to another episode of Addicted to Business. It is my great honour today to have a dear friend of mine join us on the show, Mr. Tom Kingham. Hello, Tom.
Hey, you right? How you doing, Nathan?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. So nice to have you on. I'm also delighted, as always, to be joined by the maverick, the hooligan, the lovely man that is Mr. Stokely Howard.
I'm still here, guys. I'm still here.
He's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, Tom, thanks so much for coming on. You actually look like something out of Crime Watch there, Tom. Maybe we can crack a smile.
What a compliment to start a podcast.
Good job with friends.
No, mate, I was like, Tommy there? And he was just like deadpan. I was like, whoa.
You've got like a 5 foot and a 5'3" line behind you on the wall, Tom.
I think it's for anyone that doesn't know Tom, like normally always laughing, always smiling, like the nicest of blokes. And I was like, mate, you're right. Like just cold as anything. Anyhow, good to see you, buddy. I'm really keen to start with. We'll get into Nimbus and your story and the kind of benefits of hosting and all that good stuff a bit later. But first of all, let's start right at the very start. What is the Tom Kingham story? Like, how did you go from where you were to where you are now?
That's a really good question, Nathan. So, yeah, probably take you back all the way back to being 21. I was a humanities student at UEA in Norwich, which is where you're both from. Yeah. Typical kind of coming out of university, trying to work out what the hell to do. And I actually decided to do a postgrad in marketing, and really I just was quite at that time quite apprehensive of going into the work environment. At that time I also actually signed up for an internship at an SEO agency at St James's Mill on the river. Lovely place in Norwich, writing some content, and I was doing that part-time. And really after about 6 weeks I remember just sitting in a lecture at the back and just thinking, I'm not learning anything. And I was learning so much on, say, doing that 1 day a week at the agency in Norwich, and just picking up so many tips of just hearing people on the phone, being in meetings and shadowing people. And I just asked my boss, David, at the time, I said, could I do this full time? And he said, yeah, why not? So I immediately then quit the postgrad, I think just before you had to start paying for it. Which at that time was quite a bit. It went up from say 3 to 9 grand. And I didn't really look back. I started writing content, and one thing led to me actually taking on some accounts at that time. And I really enjoyed it. One of the main things was just helping people out. I was, being quite fresh into it. It was quite scary being on the phone. I remember getting that panic on the first phone calls, being like, what do I say? But, you slowly but surely get into that. And I started learning some like social media training and just really helping out with some of the accounts. And then, fast forward, I moved back home. I'm based in Hertfordshire, and that's where Nimbus is based. And I got into sales, and really my, journey linking along all with that is really, I found that whilst I'm selling hosting at the moment, it's all about trying to help people and really not necessarily directly, just trying to sell for the sake of it. It's actually educating people and also believing in what I do. So now I'm at Nimbus Hosting. I've been there for now 4 years, and I'm helping agency owners up and down the country, try and manage and monetize their hosting a lot more effectively. So I'm really enjoying it, but that's a little bit of my background there.
What a story.
Perfect. So I'm keen to find out a little bit more about Nimbus, Tom. So who started it? Kind of what's I guess it is solely to agency, right? You can't just as a client off the street come and host with Nimbus, is that right?
Well, that's a good question. So you can. There's really kind of two models. First, I'll give you a bit of background really into Nimbus Hosting. So it was set up by Tim Dunton. So Tim's the sole owner in 2011. And Tim's had a really rich history in working in hosting and the web. He set up when he was like just 16 and, buying domains. And really, we set up in 2011. The sole focus is on agency owners, but there's real kind of two models to that. So there's working with, say, agencies where they're more web or design focused, say like yourself, Nathan, where you'll be building, say, client projects, and then you might be looking for a place to, say, host them as you sell, say, maintenance packages. So updating plugins and really maintaining those sites. But on the other hand, you might have, say, what you're doing, Stokely, where actually you're focusing on working with, say, creative projects for clients, you don't necessarily have a vested, or you don't have an interest in, say, taking on the hosting as such, because that's not what you do. That's not what you're, say, good at, but you do have a vested interest in making sure that those client sites are, fast, and they're not going to keel over if you're, say, doing a creative campaign. So in that sense, we have a lot of, say, SEO or social media agencies where they recommend their clients directly to us to, say, take on the hosting and manage it for them. And then you more get like a referral fee from that.
Okay. So from my experience of hosting, I mean, I'm a complete novice, Tom. All cards on the table. I don't know too much about it. All I do know is there seems to be a lot of companies and websites out there that give you a sort of a one size fits all package solution. I'm talking like the GoDaddies and the 123 Reg, etc. What's the difference between hosting with those types of guys and hosting with a company like yours?
That's a really good question there. So yeah, GoDaddy and 123 Reg, they're absolutely they're massive, and obviously they've got the marketing spend behind them. Always reminds me of that. Is it Redknapp's Jam Roly Poly advert that he did the end of last year? But it's interesting you say that about there being like a one size fits all with all kind of their projects. I was actually speaking to an agency last week, and we looked into, say, their back end with GoDaddy, and it's actually quite complex. They're being charged for various maintenance packages, things like backups, and it's the one thing with, say, GoDaddy is often you're brought in by that, say, cheap pricing. So you're £2, £5 a month, and then the problem is year 2 or year 3 that then ramps up quite a bit. So as an agency, you've not really got, say, a predictable way of, say, seeing what's coming in and then charging that onto the clients.
Okay.
Forever changing. But typically their hosting tends to be shared hosting. So what that means is actually you're sharing that environment with hundreds, if not thousands, of other, say, clients. I like to give a good analogy of, say, being on an aeroplane, although you probably can't do that at the moment, but picture it back to when you could. Your website is effectively sharing that environment. So if you're on there and a baby's screaming or someone's using your armrest, then you're affected. Likewise, if someone gets a massive spike in traffic, that can slow down your site. In fact, actually recently, GoDaddy had a massive data breach at the beginning of the month, and that was to do with, say, their shared environment, and they had a lot of issues. And speaking to that agency last week, they actually gave them a package for their security that helped with that, and they said, don't worry, it's free for the year. So next year, that's probably going to be at a cost. And they're really things that you should have, say, from the get-go. So that type of hosting tends to be more shared, and we don't, say, necessarily offer that. What we offer is, say, VPS or dedicated hosting. Now, what a VPS is, it's a virtual private server, but in layman's terms, that means that you've got your own like container, so it can't be encroached upon by anyone else. Back to the analogy, it's like being in like a first class. So you've got your own kind of den that if you want to watch a film,
or a private jet, if you will.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's more of like that's more of a dedicated environment where you've actually got more of your own actual dedicated resource. But a VPS is more actually where you're sharing, say, the processing power of that actual box, but it's your own section. So that's much better for, say, containing your actual site speed. It's much more reliable, and that's what I would recommend for businesses and agencies to use. And yeah, like with that analogy, the dedicated is more your own jet, so that's better for scaling up something really quickly. So for large e-commerce websites that really want to scale that up.
So Tom, one thing I'm keen to make sure we keep it at a mixed level, right? So we'll go into more complex things, but we'll also keep it really basic
for people like me.
Yeah, basically for Stokely. So essentially, I'm interested to know, in real layman's terms, what is web hosting? So someone's never heard of website hosting, right? We have to get it when we're selling it into clients. So like, actually, what is this hosting? Why do we need it? How do you describe website hosting?
So that's that. Yeah. So web hosting, how I would describe it is really, what it is I like to give another analogy here is it's like your website is actually, the actual content on there is actually like a physical building. and the actual domain name is like the postal address. So for example, bbc.co.uk, that's actually your domain name. And the actual, when you visit that site, you see all the files, the content, and the images. So for example, if you have a postal address, so the domain name, but you don't have an actual physical environment where that data is stored, then when you show up to that building, you won't see anything. Likewise, if you've actually got that, say, building or those website files, but you don't have, say, the directions to get there, so the postal address or the domain name, then you'll never find it. So really, website hosting is about making sure that, you know, when you're actually typing in, say, your the domain online, that the actual user can access those files and the data on that website.
Mate, that is a superb analogy, and that kind of takes us on nicely to say, okay, let's keep it at 101 for a little bit longer. So now we understand what websites is. We understand what web hosting is.
Yeah.
Now, why is web hosting so important? And why is there so much choice? Because again, it seems logical. Great, you need this, but surely I just go to this provider. But we're saying, no, there's actually much more to think about than just simply plug in with a big provider.
Yeah, definitely. So there's never really been a better time to actually look at your web hosting. Cloudflare, who they actually get a lot of traffic through there. That's about 10% of the internet goes through there. They noticed that over the last 3 months, that's March, April, and May, that they've had the same level of, say, internet traffic as what they'd expect in 1 year. So all businesses are really looking to go online. So it's really important that you actually take a look at, say, what's under the hood. I find that a lot of, say, clients, but also agencies, they almost see it as the same way as you look at broadband or like getting a mobile phone contract. Yeah, you might be, I'd almost picture the phone like a brand new spanking iPhone is almost like the website, all looking flashy, but then actually, you know, you're not necessarily worried about, say, the back end of, like, you know, the kind of data and all that. So it's really important to actually look under the hood and start asking questions. So one of the questions is what type of hosting am I actually on? Is it shared hosting? Is it VPS? Is it dedicated hosting? But also asking things like backups. So backups is really like an insurance policy for your website. So for example, a typical thing is if, like, you delete something, have you then got that backed up that you can then do a restoration? You know, that's really important. Also thinking about things like security. So making sure that when people visit your site, that actual experience is encrypted. So making sure that you have the padlock on the top left-hand corner. And also making sure that, you know, you've actually working with a provider that's got good uptime and good support. Because often it's actually when you have a problem, that's when then you have to speak to, say, your provider. And through experience before joining Nimbus Hosting, but also a lot of clients who have moved across, is with people like GoDaddy, it's a similar situation for, like, going to BT if you've got an issue. Well, you've got to spend all day and you've got to be passed through various chains of command. When actually, if you're, say, a client, you want to know straight away what the issue is. And especially for a digital agency owner, it's all about communication. For all intents and purposes, you're the website guys who manage the website for the client. They don't really know about hosting. So it's important that if there is an issue, you can at least communicate what you're doing back and not, say, left in the dark.
Well, I guess as an agency owner, you could in that situation almost be piggy in the middle, right? Where there's a problem over here and the client over here is kicking off saying, where's my website? And maybe not understanding the difference between web hosting and website. And therefore you're just kind of there trying, like you say, that is imperative that you have communication. That just means that essentially the client doesn't need to be kept in the dark.
Definitely. So it's super important that your hosting provider is really like an extension of your agency, so that when you've got an issue, you can actually speak to someone who knows, say, the typical problems that you might be facing, explain it in layman's terms. I often find actually picking up the phone and speaking to someone can sometimes be the difference between, you know, 10 or 15 emails. And that time's important because at the end of the day, all you want to do is get on and make sure that your clients are happy. You don't want to be, you know, picking up the issues that you don't necessarily specialize in.
Mm. So Tom, what are the most common challenges that someone, you know, faces when they come to choose their web hosting platform, whether it's client or agency or whoever?
Yeah, I guess it's all the terminology out there.
Yeah.
And it's when you look at packages, I always say it's like comparing apples and oranges. You know, you can use that quite often with a lot of things. But often when I speak to agencies or clients that are coming on, they'll go, you know, I'm looking at a couple of providers, and they're showing that they've got, say, unlimited bandwidth or 100% uptime, and you know, you might be showing, say, 2 gig of RAM and 30 disk space. But what I really say there is it's a completely different solution. That first one is more of, say, a shared environment, but there is a limit as such. It's completely different from, say, actually taking out, say, a VPS where you've got your own more dedicated resource. So yeah, I would really try and, the main challenge there is almost trying to really make sure that you don't kind of piece everyone under that same model, and really have a conversation with your provider as to what they're actually looking to offer you. So it's very different. Say, for example, if you host a WordPress website that's more just, say, a shop front, that's very different from, say, if you've got a Magento site that one day a week you get a large surge of traffic. So you should be more talking to your provider about, say, how you can overcome that massive surge. So yeah, really talk about, say, actually what you're trying to use, say, that website for, and also the differences on, say, traffic that you can get in a month as well.
So Tom, there's 2 questions I got there. One is, let's say you're a big e-com store, and actually you know you've got surges of traffic on Thursday mornings and Saturday mornings, as an example. Is it possible to flick between virtual and shared and then back again? Because you don't need that dedicated resources at all time. You just need them for peak times. Or actually, is it kind of, you're either on virtual or you're off virtual?
Yeah. So with that, I'd recommend using, say, something like a CDN like Cloudflare. Okay. And what that does is it means that you can utilize different data centers across the world. So when you get that massive surge, it means that it can basically not just be focused on your server, and you can offset that around multiple data centers. So that helps with load. Also, so we actually offer power boosts. So for example, what that means is that you can actually trial the package up for, say, 4 weeks in the year. You can take that all together or 4 weeks separately. But for example, we have some clients where we had one just last month who was going on to BBC Breakfast, and they wanted to make sure that that server was, you know, fit for purpose, so that actually if they had a massive surge that it wouldn't, say, have an issue. We quickly did a power boost in that scenario, but you don't necessarily want to be paying for that all year round. So yeah, in that scenario, I'd more say speak to your provider about giving, say, a temporary boost, but also making sure that you, say, utilize things like CDNs.
And just to confirm, a CDN is a content delivery network? That's
the one, yeah.
How familiar are you with CDNs in terms of what do they do? Again, back in layman's terms, we talked about what is hosting, what is the content delivery network in its most basic form?
Yeah, so really what it does is it just, like I mentioned there, is it offsets traffic to multiple data centers across the world. So if you're getting like hundreds of thousands of visitors visiting your site at once, you know, an example is really, say, if you're trying to book to, you know, get Glastonbury tickets and the website is going really slow. If you have a CDN in place, it will know that that's coming in, and then make sure it actually pushes that out to multiple data centers. So actually your site doesn't have, say, an effect around performance. So it keeps it up and running and keeps it fast.
Mate, that makes perfect sense. I mean, the development from that is, I'm interested to see how AWS and Azure and those kind of platforms are starting to disrupt the world of hosting, right? Because I guess you guys are different. Has it affected you much? And if so, what's been the kind of impact?
Yeah, sure. So AWS, I mean, they're a massive player. So Amazon, they, I mean, generally they get a lot of their, say, profit through AWS and their data centers. AWS's model is say different to ours in the sense it's, I would say it's fully the only kind of like scalable cloud solution. But what that means is they more charge around, say, bandwidth and traffic use. So I spoke to an agency yesterday who actually, he said that his costs had actually doubled in the last month. And that's because they're an agency that's, say, focused on, say, events and experimental marketing. And they've actually pushed that online. Now, the problem was for him is he actually wasn't then passing that cost onto the client. So if you think about it, you've got a scalable hosting solution that your developers are working on, but then you're not actually making sure that your clients are then being educated around paying for that model, which isn't necessarily sustainable for an agency, because you want to make sure that you've got a predictable hosting stream, but also you can build a decent revenue margin on that and a decent profit margin. So yeah, AWS is definitely different. I'd say it's a lot more complex as well. It can be quite difficult to manage. The agencies that I've spoken to and the ones that have come across, it tends to be that it's one developer who oversees that. Now, that can be quite complicated, say, if the developer leaves. I've had some agencies who are with AWS where the agency owner has been really worried about what to do because they haven't had the internal staff to support that. So our platform is more, say, tailored to creatives and agencies, so that if you're, say, a junior developer or a project manager or that lead developer, as a team, you can oversee all your projects and understand, say, all of them at once. And you're not, say, just having that pool of knowledge just in that one person.
That's super useful, isn't it? Like you said, when someone leaves, or just to manage teams and clients more efficiently, from your perspective. So I'm interested to find out a little bit more about backup procedures and what are the backup procedures when working with you guys? And I guess, if you will, in industry, what's the best practice for that?
So yeah, backups are, like I mentioned earlier, they're like a insurance policy.
Yeah, keep it in layman's terms for me.
So yeah, when you've got a rainy day, it's making sure that you've got a copy of that. It's like if you're saving something onto the computer or into the on your iCloud. It's making sure that you've actually got a copy of that. Should there be an issue? Should you accidentally delete it? Should there be a hardware issue? So there's different types of backups. So there's really doing, say, like an image backup. So that's actually doing like a full backup of, say, all the settings, all the files, and all the databases.
Okay.
Now that's what we offer, and we offer 30 days worth of backups. So we can actually manage that for our clients and roll them back to a particular period should there be an issue. Some providers, say more of the shared hosting providers, like the ones you mentioned earlier, they might just give you a snapshot of, say, the databases that they update. Now, the problem is with that, should you have a hardware issue, you're really left in the dark there. So that's not good. So you want to be making sure that you have a full backup of everything, because obviously when you try and spin up that hardware, you've then got to redo the settings, and actually it can take days or weeks before you have that backup and running. Also, I would really consider whether you've got it backed up in multiple data centers. So not just having it in, say, the one data center or the same server, because effectively that's one point of failure. You want to make sure that that's copied into multiple, if not a different data center. So should there be, God forbid, it's not happened in the 4 years I've been here, but if there was a fire or an issue at that main data center one, then you could effectively push it over to data center two. And particularly for, say, big e-commerce brands that you manage as an agency or as an end user client, you want to make sure that you have that failover or that disaster recovery in place. That seems to be something that is coming up quite heavily over the last year, I've found, in procurement. So DR and failover. So making sure that you understand actually what is backup, because all backups, don't treat them as the same, and also making sure that you've not got one single point of failure.
That's so true. I mean, it translates across to my industry. When we do a shoot, we have a backup. We don't delete anything off the card until it's been backed up to one hard drive. Then it gets backed up to a main hard drive, and then it gets backed up to the cloud as well. And we save all the settings in a project, which gets backed up, and the final result also gets backed up. So, and keeping it in different sources, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I actually get asked quite a lot by video or photographers or social media agencies. Out of interest, what do you use for those scenarios?
For backing up?
Yeah.
So we use hard drives, and we use Dropbox Business. But if we're on a shoot, a thing that we've started doing recently is we'll back up at the shoot, and Adam will take one hard drive with him, and I'll take one hard drive with me.
Oh, nice.
We're very, especially if it's a huge shoot, just because anything could happen, right? You could be in a car crash and you've lost all the footage from that shoot.
Yeah.
So
well, hopefully not.
Keeping it in different. It sounds quite extreme, but these things can happen. You've got to take these preventative measures.
This is a family show.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
we've got prison and car crashes on it.
Yeah, no crumbs. So really, I get that people listening and watching will understand that Nimbus and you in particular, Tom, really know Rapples, and that's great. And we've gone a lot into hosting, and I guess people are starting to think, okay, but we all know that people don't just necessarily buy on features and functions. Like if you were buying on purely functionality or features or experience, you go with Nimbus, right? Because you understand that they really know their stuff. But actually, I'm keen to just explore a little bit off topic, but some of the stuff that Nimbus has been doing around COVID and some of the community projects you get in, because I, for one, don't necessarily buy on price and don't necessarily buy on features and functions, but I buy on who I like and who I engage with. And obviously you being there helps with that. But at the same time, I'm really keen to hear about this amazing work you guys have been doing at Nimbus, because some of the stuff I saw with one of the hospitals was extraordinary.
Yeah, so we're really a people-led business. So our MD Tim, he's set up a donations through an Amazon wish list. So that was with Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow, which his wife actually works at. So he's actually made around about £60,000 in donations through from that. And that's been fantastic. And actually seeing him, we've been jumping on Zoom calls like we are here, and seeing him talk about what, say, he's learned through doing that has actually really been inspiring. And yeah, at these times of need, it's been really good to actually, look up to Tim and see that, you know, he actually has that caring nature. We've also been helping with, say, projects, so agencies that have got projects that might need, say, some charities. So we've been supporting them with, say, free hosting at this time. And we've also been helping agencies with, say, a 4-for-1 hosting offer, so giving them 4 months hosting for the price of 1. So it's really to just help all those agencies at this time of need, where you've got some agencies that perhaps might be working in, say, the hospitality sector that are really struggling. So we're trying to help them with their costs, but also, say, for those ones that are really trying to work on new services and benefit from, say, testing out new things and giving them the platform to actually go, look, set up your new project here and see if you like it. So yeah, really trying to help people out at this time of need, because it's absolutely unprecedented circumstances.
So I'm keen also to know, as a kind of businessman yourself, need a bit of entrepreneurial spirit in there as well. A massive Tottenham fan, I know, but how else do you switch off? Because whenever I was best of mates with him until I found out he was a Spurs fan. But importantly,
hang on, I took you.
He took me to Tottenham. Yeah, we went to the old New Ireland.
Oh, you're a Norwich traitor now, Nathan.
Yeah.
I see.
No, I was in there with the Spurs fans, just head down, just not saying anything.
You celebrated when they scored.
Oh, shut up.
Oh, it's all coming out now.
No, you already
egg him.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be done. So no, it's really important for me that I'm interested to know how you get a chance to switch off, because I see you super active on LinkedIn. You're always helping others, always involved in the agency community and business community in general. How do you get away from it all, and how do you just get time to yourself?
Yeah, that was something I actually struggled with initially when we were going into this, with all the kind of, like, there's a lot of negative press at the start of, the end of March. And yeah, I actually, at the time, I had symptoms around COVID, which, you know, all on top of that and trying to self-isolate. And also, you know, there was a lot of panic around how bad was this going to get. I guess in hindsight, you know, we can see that hopefully at the moment, in the next couple of months, that we're going to be, say, coming out of this, or at least we've gotten over that curve. But yeah, it was scary at that time. So, I mean, I absolutely love seeing people, and I love getting out and about, you know, speaking to people. So that transition was quite difficult, you know, being at home and trying to motivate yourself in that sense. So yeah, it was, what we were trying to do was just regularly as a team meet up and play games over, like, Zoom, or we mentioned house party earlier. What we do as well on Friday at 4:30, we all down tools and share a beer over Zoom, because that's something that we typically do on a Friday afternoon at work. We'll play some pool or some table tennis, pretty much an agency feel. But we wanted to
the most stereotypical where they go down the slide and then we just
into a ball pit.
we do work, really, trust me. But yeah, we wanted to continue that and make sure that we still had that feel. So yeah, cracking a beer and just really, talking about it. So yeah, my thing is just trying to get off into like the countryside in the evening. I regularly go for walks or listen to podcasts. This weekend I'm going to look to go kayaking. It's just trying to say, look at things differently. So I'm always trying to check in back with myself and see how I'm feeling, because it's really important. I know it's Mental Health Awareness Week, which is, can be difficult for a lot of us. And I've certainly had things in the past that I've struggled with that. And it's important that you always check in and make sure that you're not, say, trying to overwork in these times, because actually having that transition from working at home is different. So I have a little tip where I actually, at 5:30, when I clock off or a bit later, I'll actually go for a walk around the block, or around the street, as I should say. And it's just that mental awareness of actually going, right, I've actually, now switched off.
Yeah, you kind of decompress.
Which is quite nice. Yeah.
And then you can kind of, get that transition. That makes perfect sense. A lot of people I speak to saying actually working from home, unless you do that exercise or do that kind of trigger that allows you to differentiate, it does all just blend into one, and before you know it, you're cooking while still working and whatever. And it's it's hard to get the balance. Tom, I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing so much insight. For anyone listening that's interested to know more about you guys over at Nimbus and the services you offer, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So you can either visit our website, nimbushosting.co.uk, or drop me an email at tom@nimbushosting.co.uk, or connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message. As I said, we're running like a 4-for-1 hosting offer at the moment. That ends at the end of this month, in May, but I appreciate that this is probably going to be going out
around about July, mate. So
exactly, yeah. I saw you mentioned that. But I think in one of those things, just drop me a call. I've got my details on there, or come and speak to me, and I'm always willing to help people. Or at least what we're trying to do at the moment is review, say, your hosting offer and give you tips. I'm always here to help, because I'm a big believer in, if you can help people, even if it doesn't necessarily mean they come on as a customer, actually it might be, say, someone that they refer to later down the line. And I know you're a big believer in that, Nathan.
Massively so. I think it's a really nice mantra to operate with, and continue to pay forwards and help others, and you'll reap the rewards in due course later down the line. But for now, just keep seeing how you can help others. Tom, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Stokely. Was there anything else from your side you'd like to add?
Not from me, Tom. I'm just really appreciate the value that you've given today. Hopefully it'll help all the listeners.
Mate, thank you so much. Good to catch you.
Thank you very much.
Next time I'm taking the Carrow Road, I'll make sure I don't tell anyone that you've been celebrating. Take care. Cheers, mate.
That's it.
Take care. Bye.